Hello everyone, and my name is Kartik Patiar and I represent ShareChat and Moj. And today what I want to do is kind of provoke your thinking towards how do we actually rethink marketing for auto as the consumer landscape has changed so much, right? So in the next 25 minutes, I think I would consider myself or my 20 minutes to be successful if I have moved your thinking even a little bit in terms of how one needs to rethink auto marketing, right? And moving from a demographic-based targeting stack towards a culturographics-based targeting stack. Let's talk about this. Now, of course, the India four-wheeler growth story is driven by aspiration, right? What this means that India is not just growing, right? It is upgrading. And you have two buckets of upgrade that is happening in the auto space, right? One bucket says that 1 out of 2 people have shifted from a lower segment vehicle, let's say a hatchback, to a higher segment vehicle, which is an SUV. Likewise, we see that on ShareChat and Moj as a platform, 3 out of 4 people, which is 75% of the users, already have a two-wheeler and are either looking to upgrade to a high-level two-wheeler or to a four-wheeler, right? Now, what does this context imply? This context implies that as the nation is progressing and as the users are also, or the consumers are progressing, they're not just looking at auto as a mobility device or a mobility vehicle. They're looking at it from an aspirational lens and from an identity lens. And this shift that's happening in the users is not just economic. It's not just about income expansion. It is actually much more deeper than that. It is cultural. Now look at this data point from Kantar, right? And this really is very hard-hitting one. It says that 72% of the consumers are more likely to buy from your brand when the content is in their native language of consumption. Now let that data point sink in, right? It's 72%. It's not marginal. It's not peripheral. It's a significant shift of 72% that moves not awareness, not consideration, it moves purchase intent. So literally bottom of the funnel, you're able to move the needle in a very significant manner if you're reaching out to the users in the language of their choice, right? The second and more interesting thing is that 67% of consumers today are looking for social proofing. Now, what does social proofing means? Social proofing means that they're actually looking to, hear about people who look like them, who sound like them, who actually live their lives. They're not necessarily always influenced by celebrities or the big ones, but they're actually looking for hyperlocal voices who look, sound, and live like them. And that's a very important phenomenon. Now, what this means is that culture is now creating a very strong bridge to deliver trust and relevance. And the good thing about this is that if you look at a platform like ours, which is ShareChat and Moj, the native onboarding experience asks the user to just do one thing when you download the app, to select the language of your choice. That's the only question you are asked when you download ShareChat and Moj. What this means is that language as a targeting option is not probabilistic. It is not inferred. It is a deterministic signal that the consumer gives, which means you can actually reach out to consumers in the language that they're looking to consume content in. Now, I spoke about culturographic segmentation, but let's define what is culture, right? And I really like the talk that Arjun and Ashish were having a while back, where even they were deep diving into cultural aspects about two-wheeler purchase. But what is culture actually? Culture is not a trend. Culture is not just one festival. And by the way, culture is not only language that I spoke about. Culture is a form of a shared identity. It's about aspiration. It's about everyday rituals that people come and do in a certain community or a platform that gives them a sense of belonging, right? And that's super, super important. And why do you think culture is so important for a category like auto? Culture is very important because if you think about it, like we said, the aspirational consumer is looking to upgrade. He's either looking to go to a four-wheeler or a higher-end two-wheeler. And when you talk about that aspirational consumer who's looking for an identity, he's actually looking for a culture fit. So the brands who can speak to that culture fit actually stand to gain as against somebody who's just planning on reach saturation. And here's where we as a platform come in, which is ShareChat and Moj. We are India's largest language-first culture platform. Across the two apps, which is ShareChat and Moj, we have a 200 million monthly active user base. We are present in 15 plus Indian languages. And the average daily time spent on the app is 55 minutes. Now, till about 6 months back, the average time spent on our platform used to be 34 minutes. 6 months ago, something dramatic happened, not just for us, but for the entire Indian content landscape. And our average time spent on the app has jumped up from 32, 34 minutes to 55 minutes. And that phenomena is microdrama. How many of you in the room have heard about microdrama? Show of hands. Anybody? Okay, at least some of you have. Great. Now, microdrama, and I'll talk about this because this is a very strong cultural aspect for us, is a very strong pillar for us. And today we see about 300 million plus daily views coming only on microdrama content on the platform. Now, this is my most important slide, right? And here is where I want to present to you a cultural framework in terms of how you can actually approach the new consumer in a very, very new landscape, right? If you come to think of it, when you look at demographics, right, it basically tells you who the consumer is, right? It tells you the age, the gender, and so on and so forth, where they live, how they consume data, how they consume content. But more important, it is the culture signals that tell you what they actually care about, what actually makes them move, how are they going to make a decision. So this is the culture signals that are very important. Now, why does it, again, coming back to auto as a category, right? Why does it matter to auto as a category? It matters for two reasons. One, if you think about the auto category, the purchase cycle or the consumer decision journey is typically very elongated, right? It sometimes runs into months, which means it's important to have that cultural connect going through the consumer decision journey as you're trying to connect with these consumers. And the second is that the two-wheeler or four-wheeler purchase, even today, is a very, very emotional decision. Many a times, in many households, it's perhaps the largest financial decision the family will take for that year, right? So getting that emotional and consumer connect at a cultural level is very important. The way I visualize this is to say that to understand the consumer from the outside, think of it like a container, right? Demographic signals define the outside. It defines the age, it defines the gender, it defines where they are present, it defines how are they consuming content on what device. But the real stuff lies inside the container, which is how do they make decisions, what matters to them, what ticks them, who do they trust, when do they act. These are very, very essential culture signals, and don't get the idea that I'm only proposing the right side, right? In my framework, what I'm trying to say is that it's not either or, right? So if some of you are Mark Ritson followers, he has a concept of bothism, which means you have to do the left and you have to do the right, which means that you need demographic targeting to get reach, precision reach, and at scale, and you have to layer that with culture signals. That's when the impact of the ROI becomes maximum, because only when you have the context of maximizing your precision reach through demographic data and layering it on with the culture signals in terms of what ticks with them, what makes them move, how do they make decisions, it's only then that you get the maximum ROI, right? So that's something that's really critical. And at ShareChat and Moj, all these culture signals are not cookie data for us. These are not inferred data, these are not third-party data. This is data that we have on the platform. Let me tell you how. Like I told you, once a user downloads the app, they self-select the language. So language comes in as an option for us. Number two, the users on our platform actually engage with a lot of hyperlocal voices or hyperlocal creators. They engage in a lot of challenges like hashtag challenges and communities. That is a lot of content information that is very valuable to drive culture signals. And thirdly, we are also seeing a lot of content consumptions which is very culture first. For example, today, 1/3 of my audience is consuming microdrama on the platform. Every day, we have about 40 to 60 million WhatsApp shares, that go out from ShareChat into the WhatsApp ecosystem. So a lot of those content signals layered along with the demographic signals is what will define a holistic framework in terms of how to approach this. So all of this looks very good on theory, looks very good on paper, but let's make it real, right? So let's meet an actual potential upgrader in the auto category who is actually present on the platform. So your demographic data will tell you that, hey, he's 30 years old, male, he's from Kerala, follows cricket, probably would have seen the India-Zimbabwe match yesterday and is looking forward to the India-West Indies. But he's not just consuming it on the primary device, which is probably a connected TV or the phone. He also has a secondary device where he creates memes around this, shares it with his friends and family. Then he consumes regional news, explores new models of cars, watches microdrama, and that's important because then he comes back to the platform again and again and there's stickiness. And of course, he trusts hyperlocal voices, uses car not just for his family but also for personal commute. And what this means for brands is that layering the demographic along with the cultural signals, they are able to give reach at a very relevant scale, have much, much sharper targeting. And the best part is because you're in the cultural context of the consumer, you're not very intrusive when you're talking about your brand because you understand his context and he understands why you're there, right? And on the platform, of course, and I want to underline the point in the middle, right? 80% of our audience on ShareChat as Moj is tier 2, tier 3, but 1 out of 2 audience is an SUV user, and 52% of households actually have 2 vehicles or more, right? Now, as I talked about the cultural framework, I'll just double click on 3 elements of this. And the first element is basically the explosion of a new content format called microdrama.
इस खास दिन के लिए एक खास तोहफा।
आसमान हूं जहां तक तुम पहुंच भी नहीं पाओ।
पैसा तो मैंने इतना कमाया है कि तुम कभी सपने में भी ना सोच पाओ।
बॉयफ्रेंड है वो मेरा।
हाँ?
So you get the drift, right? Basically, every episode in microdrama is between 60 to 90 seconds. Every episode ends on a cliffhanger, and that keeps the audience wanting for more, right? So the funny insight, right, to give you is that if an audience on our platform reaches the 4th episode of microdrama, there's a 90% plus chance they reach episode 50. Of course, not in one sitting, but at least 2-3 sittings. That's the stickiness of microdrama as a format. And the way I want you to visualize is that you have pure, dopamine-based scrolling on one end of the axis, and you have very leaned in kind of OTT consumption, long-form consumption on the other end of the axis. Microdrama sits at the sweet spot in between, which is it has a storyline, it engages the user, but at the same time you can consume 4 episodes between your meetings or 5 episodes when you're on the metro ride, right? So that's what's important about it. We have seen a massive explosion. About 1 in 3 people who come to our platform are today completely hooked on to microdrama as a content format. And the best part about it is that, of course, it's leaving long-form content behind, right? This is the stats in terms of time spent on the platform. Our average is about 175 minutes. And of course, if you leave cricket out, we are actually larger in terms of time spent than most OTTs in terms of long-form content. The other thing is the second cultural pillar I want to talk about is about the hyperlocal voices. Today, the penetration of influencers is across the country, right? See, one of the things that stands out for ShareChat and Moj as a platform is that we have 4,200 plus pin code coverages. I'll give you an example. When you talk about Tamil Nadu as a state, right, the penetration of influencers who can work with brands is not just in the big cities of Tamil Nadu. It is actually across 40% of the pin codes in just one state, which means that our creators who collaborate with brands are not just limited to the metro audience. They actually have a deeper penetration across the pin codes in the country, and hence this becomes very powerful when you want to relate to or speak like the people coming from those areas, right? And the last part is around festive, right? Lot of platforms, right, will tell that festive is around Diwali or Dasera or some of the big elements. But because we are culture first, vernacular first, language first, for us festival happens almost every 15 days because India is a land of festivals. Some stats in terms of user-generated content that comes onto our platform. Of course, a bigger festival like Diwali would have like say 100 million plus of content created. But even smaller festivals, which is Janmashtami, Onam, Ganesh Chaturthi, see not only high amount of user-generated content, but they also see large amount of engagement that happens, right? So just as a last slide, just want to summarize the culture pillars that we at ShareChat and Moj are trying to set up. One is of course through language. How do you reach to our audience in the native language of their choice? Leveraging hyperlocal voices, which is your local influencers across deep pin codes. Culture, of course, can be expanded through microdrama, which is the biggest explosion in the content space that's happened in the last 6 months. And of course, leveraging not just the big festivals, but also the micro festivals and leveraging them well. And of course, since we are largely a user-generated platform, leveraging that to create stories that are relevant to the brand. So that's my time. I'll just leave you with this QR code. Of course, a lot of you, maybe new to microdrama, may still be wondering how can a brand like us leverage microdrama? A simple hack, just scan the QR code on your phone and book a consultation with us, and somebody from our team will reach back out to you. Thank you so much.